So, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Complex Trauma Institute. I'm Celia Dawson, one of the trainers. Today I'm going to be talking to Karla Dolinsky. And I don't know Karla very well myself, so I'm going to ask her to introduce herself and tell us about yourself, Karla, and how you got into this strange world of working with complex trauma.
Thank you, Celia. Um, yes, I'm living in Victoria, Canada, and that's where I'm based. But I do work all over the world with on various contracts. I have a master's degree in counseling, which is a little bit different than psychology because my role is not to diagnose people or to merely set up treatment plans. My role and what I'm specifically trained on is to be in the room with the client and help them through their various challenges, whether it be life transitions, whether it be new things that have come into their lives like accidents or deaths, grief, loss, various aspects that they just need a little assistance with or a great deal of assistance with.
Sometimes,
So
yes.
yeah, sometimes it is several years that I'm working with a client, depending on what has been happening with them and what's happened in the past. So I really enjoy my work. It feels like I've really found exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And I think I came by this because I've always been someone who's been very introspective in my own life and wanting to know, hey, what's going on here? And before I came to this work, I did a lot of my own work. So
Yeah.
I understand what it is to process what's been going on and be curious about what the dynamics and what the factors are that are happening in my life in order to stay as healthy as I can, which seems to have layers in it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you can only take a client as far as you've been yourself. And if you've been there and done the work, then it makes it's really helpful, isn't it?
Yeah. I think I
Mhm.
found that because I've become in my circle of contacts, I've become the person that people send their most challenging cases to
All
because,
right.
and I never understood that initially. I wanted to do just sort of simple things, but suddenly some very, very challenging, complicated cases were landing at my door, and I seemed to be able to work with them. And I think that that's when I started to understand what it is to work with complex trauma. I never set out to do that. I thought I was going to be, working with either children or families. That was sort of my idea. But as these cases continued to come to me, and I understand that I had an aptitude and a knack or a skill with it, or maybe it was a sense, like you say, of okay, I recognize some of this, not necessarily putting my own journey on the client at all, but
No.
understanding what some of the questions to ask might be.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And do you work with the body, or is it just sort of what we consider normal counselling?
Yeah, that's a question I get a lot. Is my clients sometimes ask, well, why are we working with the body? Because I'm trying to figure this out. And so I work with the body quite a bit because the way I explain it to clients is trauma first happens to us in the body. And I explain that if suddenly an enormous raging horse breaks through the door, the first thing that happens is we go, and all of our senses get activated because in the distress response or the trauma response, we need to, our bodies naturally activate the senses to find out. get as much information as possible to send to the thought processes of what's going on. And so the body is enacted first. And even after we figure out what's going on, we then need to attend to the body to have that final happen. And so the release in the body is often what gets stuck. And if it is stuck and
Yeah.
you're being held, then it's much more easy to activate it again. You're
Yeah.
at that
People
higher level.
aren't in a, yeah, they're not in a position to be able to do that breathing out and it just continuous thing. I think those are the clients who are the most difficult to work with because they really are really badly affected by the trauma.
Hmm. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's much more complicated than just breathing out. It is about finding those spaces where there is tension being held or memories being held, memories
Hmm.
in our body. Yeah, so I'm trained in EMDR, eye movement
Yes.
desensitization and
Can you
reprocessing.
explain that to anyone who doesn't know what it is, please?
It's it's really quite mysterious. I find it magic still after many, many years of working with people but it calls upon the body to replicate the eye movements or a bilateral stimulation. If you're not using the eyes, you can use sensory little buzzers, vibrators in the hands as well. But you're stimulating the bilateral stimulation or the eye movements that are often used happen naturally at night when we're in REM sleep and our minds are doing the processing through dreams. And so once we activate that in a highly contained way, and that's for the therapist to be in charge of, then does become this sort of free association and accesses the memories, and what needs to happen will happen. I often don't know what that is. My client doesn't know exactly how it will come out, but the body knows. And so whatever will come up naturally will come up, and the body finds its way through healing. We're quite remarkable creatures in that we really want to be in a place of health. And the um, if we clear the obstacles or clear the wounds that need to be healed, we'll often move in that direction.
Oh, there's a sort of a natural, I think Carl Rogers said it was a natural moving forward process in the body and
Yeah,
take
yeah,
everything out of the way and let it work. Yeah.
yes. And
Yeah.
I really admire and I really believe in the Rogerian way of working with.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So you say you grow up in Canada
Yes, I
and
did.
what's it like where you live?
I think I grew up a little bit differently than most of the population, although we have quite a large rural population. But I grew up in a farm in the prairies in Alberta. Um, and I think that it took me a while to figure out that that really was the way I grew up was quite a unique experience in that I was always out in the fields, wandering around and on a horse or with my dog exploring and that movement. And it's like how we talk about play therapy now. That movement helped me to process whatever I needed to process. I was continually challenging myself. Um, but I think that one of the things that really taught me a lot about how we can move in the world in a balanced way was I was about 10 years old and probably about 65 pounds. Very, very slight young girl. And one of the tasks I had was to learn how to teach the calf to walk on the lead. And the calf was probably 20 pounds heavier than me and unruly, of course. And so you have
Yeah.
this very earnest kid trying to do this, and you can't overpower the calf. And when you're riding a 1,200-pound horse, you can't overpower the horse. And so that taught me about the balance of me and the other. and that respect and listening and paying attention to the cues, as well as being very solidly aware of who I am and what I'm doing, and understanding the interplay of the two is very important for relationships. And
Mhm.
that one person or one being dominating the other really has a unsatisfying end, whereas both working together um, can actually help us achieve where we're wanting to go. And I think that that's one of the things that I bring to my therapeutic room or therapeutic space is that, yes, I am skilled in what I do and I have a lot of experience, but the other person is my client is skilled and has an awareness or experience in who they are and what they might need. And that balance of communication and of respect and of who's leading at different times is very, very important in the therapeutic space. I need to get to know who my client is. I don't just bring um, a formula to what we're going to be doing. I need to know who they have in their life that is supportive of them, and who they have in their life that, whether it be family or work relationships, that might be someone that they need to be aware of and be wary of.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah.
Oh. So yes, it's not something that can be described very simply. Just that relationship and that two beings together. Yes,
Mhm.
getting some kind of balance. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm. Oh, I can't imagine you as a 10-year-old with a cow.
It's pretty funny.
Yes, and being able to manage a cow. I've tried to manage cows. They're not easy.
I was actually out on a hike or a ramble, I suppose, out in England recently in a fairly rural area. And I was with friends, and there was this herd of about 10 or 12 cows right in the middle of the path, and lots of brush around that was impassable. And the people that I'm with were aghast with the fact that I just walked right up to them and, wrangled them to the side, and in a very respectful, gentle, but forceful way. They were they still talk about it.
Fantastic.
You never know when you can use those skills. Yeah.
So what's this work that you do all around the world then? What kind of things do you do and where do you go?
So some of the work that I do is related to airline incidents. And so responding um, to any time that the employer is called to look after where there have been either rough landings or um, fatalities, things like that. Yeah. And so as a counselor, there's a lot of skills that I can bring to that. I can be speaking with pilots or in for several sessions just to bring their their nervous systems down and to allow them that space to understand what is it that happened to them, not in terms of the incident, but in their response to the incident. And there's a lot of psychoeducation that I employ at times like that, and just helping them have that space to discharge some of the energy and find some calm. Yeah.
Hmm. And where do you do this?
Wherever you're called to do this. Yeah.
All right. So how do you cope with languages?
We have translators if that's required. A lot of the places we do have other counselors that speak other languages as well. But much of what can be done through translators. Yeah. Or I've worked with people from other countries that also speak fluent English.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
what's it like working through an interpreter? I've never tried that.
I do some work in China and I have one specific interpreter that I use. She's not a trained counselor, but we have found a way to work very well together. She understands my style and what it is I'm looking for. And it is fairly interesting to work with the translator because part of what I'm looking for is hearing the words, but whether it's in person or on Zoom or virtually, I really watch for the responses, the physiological responses
Um,
in the client. And so it's helpful for me to watch how the client is responding and looking at those physical cues. Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, because I couldn't do interpreters sometimes get in the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah,
No, I agree. I agree. But when you don't have the opportunity or the client doesn't have the opportunity to speak with someone who is specifically a trauma counselor,
mm,
then there can be so much missed in terms of what it is they may be needing. And especially when there is so much body work to be done. And so as
yeah,
I'm talking them through these exercises, that's why I like working with my one specific interpreter in Mandarin. Um, she's very aware of what I'm communicating in terms of the body work that I'm wanting to see. Then I can watch what's happening in the client's body and get a better understanding of what we might need next. Yeah.
Can you tell us something about what you do with the body in those situations?
So some of what I do is I start with the square breath exercise,
Oh,
and
yes.
the square breath.
We'll better explain it. Sorry, yes.
No, but what's helpful for that is just even to see how someone is breathing and to see
Yeah.
where the challenges are, and if they can. Some people can't um, sustain that and can't even get through
Really?
4 squares.
Mhm.
Another exercise that I use quite often is the butterfly hug, which is just a gentle tap on either side. And I find that people who have a very high charge, um, they don't want to do that because what it's doing is it's tapping into um, and they'll find it extremely uncomfortable and they'll refuse. But as I suggest that they stay with it and reassure them through it, what often happens is it is actually challenging that very high, what we might call an anxiety charge or a distress charge, is as they stay with it, even for a minute, that's released and the tears will flow. And that's what they've been avoiding is just that reaction of tears and of breaking into sobs has been something they've been holding for so long. And the butterfly hug is a threat to that. And so it gives them the opportunity to release. Other people, when they start the butterfly hug, they just melt. They just think it's the greatest thing going. And that's sort of where they want to stay. And I get a lot of information about my client through those exercises. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yes, you trained as a psycholinguist.
Yeah.
Can you explain what that is?
So, psycholinguistics, I've always been fascinated with language. I started writing poetry when I was about 8 years old and always found the just play with words as well and always found language fascinating. Is how do we come to express who we are or what's within us and clearly express that to someone else? And how do they take that and unravel that message? Um, and so when I went to university, initially when I was in my early 20s, didn't know what I was wanting to be when I grow up, is I took neuropsychology and a linguistics course and ended up getting a double major in neuropsychology and linguistics.
You joined
And
the two.
Yes. And for a master's degree, I just was so in love with the idea of the psychology of language, why we say what we say, how language is used in terms of power, how we develop it, what happens when it falls apart, and we either through neurological damage or through crisis that we just can't express ourselves, power differences, sex differences in language, cultural differences. So I took a master's degree in psycholinguistics. Um, and really, it's helped me throughout my career, no matter what I've done, whether it's, serving tables as a waitress or working in multiple stakeholder negotiations, which is one of the most important things that I did with that, because it really has made me sensitive to our choices in language and not only in the individual words, but how we utilize the power in language and where we can actually increase our skills and awareness in how we say things. And that includes the biases that we may have, whether that bias is intentional or whether it's because we really we have a narrow field of vision. And when I'm working with clients, often what is hindering them is that they only see one or two ways that their life can be. And in the conversation, I can suss that out and I can give them through language, through some narrative therapy, I can give them the opportunity or the access to various options that might be open to them so that they have greater choice, they feel less stuck, and there are greater possibilities. They may not take those choices, of course, that's up to them. But we can start that dialogue, and I can do it in a way that is gentle, non-demanding. And although I have to say that a lot of my clients say that I'm a pit bull, but mostly because I hold people accountable and I catch them on, when they're lying to themselves, I think is a
Yeah,
really, really important thing. Yeah.
yeah.
And the
People
gentle.
do lie to themselves.
Yeah, and I will address that in a gentle way and hold them to that, which is helpful.
And when people are stuck, they think they only have one or two options, don't they? And helping to see other aspects of it and yeah, different perspectives. Yeah, I think
That can be
it's a
very,
lot of
very,
the work. Yeah,
yeah, it can be so distressing and it can actually really, really hold hold some people up from really self-actualizing and seeing the full potential of their lives. And I think that that's one thing that I find so beautiful about the work that we do is that um, is that we can help people to see a greater potential in their lives than they may have,
yeah.
because the focus is on what's in their way. Yeah.
Hmm. Have you got someone in mind when that's happened and really worked?
Yes. And I have permission to share this story and
Yeah.
I'm not disclosing specifics, but I had a client come to me. She was in her early 20s, and I was the fifth counselor that she had accessed. And it was about a year and a half after her car accident. And it was a horrific car accident where the friend that she was in the car with, who was driving the car, had died. And she it was snowy conditions. It was a terrible accident. She had hit the windshield, so had a big cut in her face. And when she woke up, she was on top of her friend,
Oh,
which is a horrifying situation,
terrible. Yes.
and hadn't realized that the friend was dead.
Mm.
And um, once she figured that out, and she had first aid training, and realized that and got out of the car and made the phone call to 911. The 911 operator said, "Well, are you sure they're dead? Did you take a pulse?" Well, it was obvious that by other means that the person was dead, but she had to go back to the
Yes.
site to take the pulse of a dead person. All of this was extremely traumatic. Um, and of course, all of the other things that happen. She had aspired to be a first responder, either a firefighter or an ambulance attendant. And because of the sirens, the lights, the fact that it was a driving situation going off the road, she had terrible nightmares, of course, and panic attacks, and had challenges driving, and had challenges with weather conditions when driving, challenges being a passenger in a car, challenges with lights and sirens, would have panic attacks, uncontrollable. And so a year and a half later, when she finally came to me, we were working on this, and she was told by one of her counselors that she would never be a first responder. That's a dream she had to give up on. And we worked very hard together and earnestly. And I told her, that doesn't make sense to me. We don't know that yet, which she kind of liked that answer. And as we worked through this, it took uh, close to 2 years, working slowly, diligently, working, accessing her strengths, not only attending to where she had vulnerabilities, is and when she signed up to work with volunteer firefighters and take the training, we were still working together on everything that was coming up for her. And she now can go to any call, and including vehicle accident calls, without any thing rising up in her. And she is what I would call, fairly healed. She knows that there's still that memory in her body, um, but it's not something that she battles with on a day-to-day basis. She, just like any other situation, she takes care of herself. She doesn't allow herself to get depleted, but she is able to be a full-fledged firefighter. Yeah,
That's a real achievement, isn't it? Yeah.
it is. It is.
Yeah.
Um, that took a lot of hard work on her part, a lot of dedication of us working together, a lot of back and forth. But when people come to me and say, "Well, I have PTSD and I'm medicated, what else can I do?" I have my heart kind of hurts because I think, well, you've been taking medication for 10 years and nobody has told you there's other things that you can do, that there is, a certain degree of healing that can happen for you. And I think that that's one thing that a lot of people don't connect to, is that people, individuals with PTSD or that are having anxiety attacks, there are possibilities for them to live a different life.
You think people just assume they're incurable and give them something to calm them down?
Yeah. And I
Mm.
think that that just speaks to the medical model out there, which the medical model has a lot of a very important place in
Yeah,
our society for various mental health issues, but it isn't the only
I
answer
know.
to various, especially to incidents that come from either complex trauma or critical incident, single incident traumas that happen in our lives. Yeah.
Yeah, they're very good at doing physical things, cutting bits out of us and putting things in
Yeah.
and giving us tablets. But yeah,
Mhm.
what we do is it's a lot more subtle, isn't it?
It is. And I think some people, understandably, don't feel that the patients will bring them the results that
Mm.
they want or need. And so I completely respect the client's choice and opinion on what it is that they think they need and want. I just think it's very important um, that it's a decision made with as much information as possible, an informed decision. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, complex trauma is still quite a new field, isn't it? And a lot
Yes.
of people don't know much about it.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
general public don't, anyway. So yeah, it's
Yeah, how
quite a new path we're forging here.
yeah. And how we hold things in our body is very important. If we haven't had that, like if the horse comes through the door and we do the, and we haven't actually released that, and more bad things happen, we're
Mhm.
storing things and we're holding things and we're believing things. We're being hyper vigilant in ways that can really accumulate and change the trajectories of our decision making in our lives. Yeah.
Yes, it can. Well, like that person you worked with who wanted to be a first responder, thought it would be impossible. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
because
believed it because they were told by an authority that it
yeah,
was.
yeah, we have to be very careful what we say, don't we?
Yeah.
With our
Well,
linguistics, yes,
the self-limiting beliefs that many of us have. Yeah.
yeah. And it's good to fish those out, isn't it? And find out where they've come from, and yeah, have a good look at what makes you think certain things, and why are you convinced that such a thing is happening when that might not be the case.
Mhm. And I think we don't really see those as traumas in themselves when we're told that we can or can't do something. We think of things like bombs going off or houses
Yes,
down. Yeah. Yeah.
but this is people being constantly told that they're useless and will
Yeah.
never amount to anything or can't do
Or
this, that, or the other. Yeah.
unattractive or undesirable or a bother or, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or just ignored. That I think that's even the worse, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Neglect is an
Yeah.
enormous trauma to work with. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. Do you think people can always recover from trauma, or are some people going to be stuck with it in some degree or other?
I don't have the answer to that yet. I
No, I
think
don't think we do.
I think it's similar to the whole interplay between the 10-year-old and the calf. Um, it depends on who you're working with on both sides. If my client had stayed with the counselor that said you will never be this,
Yes. Then
then
she wouldn't have been.
that might have been what had happened in her life. If
Yeah.
she wouldn't have worked as hard as she did. Um,
Mm.
so it's an interplay, I think. And I think that that's why it's really important to, and I never have a challenge with a client that says, I really, I'm not going to work with you. It is so much about the right fit. It's
Yeah,
very,
absolutely.
very much about the
Yeah.
right fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's hard work and takes a lot of courage, doesn't it?
It's a great deal of courage. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about your work, or can we
Um,
wind this up now?
I think that's mostly it. I really, I think that it helps that I really like people, and
Yes.
I see that even in challenging situations, um, I had my when I was training my supervisor as we go into um, as we went into group supervision, um,
Mhm.
was explaining a case, and my supervisor said, "Huh." the way you talk about your client, it sounds almost like you're in love with them. And I kind of laughed and I said, well, you know what? I kind of have to care very much about my clients
Yeah,
and find something to care about, even if it is challenging, find that care. Because if I'm not doing that from a genuine place of caring for my client, then I'm just kind of going through the motions. And
yes,
so I think that it is a relationship, a counselor-client relationship is
yeah,
one that has a great deal of caring in it, I hope.
yeah. Well, the client will pick it up if you don't really care about them. Soon
Yeah,
enough, they're used to people who don't really care about them.
yeah. And
Yeah,
hopefully, if the client feels ambivalent, then hopefully in a short period of time, they will begin to care more about their lives as well.
get their confidence and make them feel more confident in themselves. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Just
Well,
that,
it's been a delight. Yes, well, you'll say something else? Sorry.
no, it's just that I like people and this work has um so much rewarding aspects
Yeah,
to it.
it's
It
so
difficult is. It's
fascinating.
also
Yeah,
really hard work. Yeah,
it's really hard work,
it
but
is.
just fascinating. Yeah,
It is
yeah.
fascinating. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Carla. It's been a delight talking to you, and I wish you all every success with your future clients and your business with the airlines. And yeah, that must be really interesting too. So, fantastic.
It's a
Thank
nice
you.
other
Thank
aspect.
you.
Celia.